Hey everybody, Austin back again, continuing my October Castlevania Let's Play Marathon. Today we're going to be continuing with Castlevania Adventure for the original Game Boy. Now this is actually one that I wasn't really planning on doing, but I was looking through my Castlevania collection the other day and I was like, you know what? I've never actually completed Castlevania Adventure. Let's try to do it while I play a Let's Play. So here we are, Castlevania Adventure for the original Game Boy. Castlevania Adventure is actually a pretty tough little Castlevania game, and I say little because it's only 4 stages long, as far as I'm aware. I mean, it could possibly be 5, but I fought Dracula in his second form on the end of stage 4, so I'm going to assume, go out on a limb and assume that it's only 4 stages long. Again, I've never actually completed this game before. In the past, I've gotten to Dracula, but this game it's tough. It's well, the first 2 stages aren't really that tough, but the second 2 stages are, and Dracula himself is also pretty tough. You have to play it just right, otherwise you can really screw yourself over. So, yeah, Castlevania Adventure for the Game Boy. We're already in the game, and, you know, this game has some interesting features. Well, I'm just going to leave it at interesting. I don't really care for some of the features. And I'll get to that in a little bit, but it is a relatively unique Castlevania. For one, power-ups in this game, or at least your whip power-up, is done a little bit differently than it was before. You still have to grab a pickup, and in this game it's these little orbs that'll power up your whip. But whereas in the original few Castlevania games, or at least parts 1, 3, 4, and Bloodlines, you would basically sort of randomly get a drop that had a whip power-up. And you would be able to upgrade your whip really fast. I mean, if you're going to get your whip upgraded through your candles, it was only going to take, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 candles to get your whip fully powered up. It didn't take that long to do it. In this game, you don't have that. There's no really random element. The orbs you get to power up your whip, they're in very set locations. And, you know, that might not normally be a problem, but in this game, when you get hit, your whip gets downgraded. So you can very easily get screwed and get stuck back with the leather whip, like I have right now. And the leather whip, which I have, sucks. It's really not very good. Everything takes more hits with it naturally, as you would expect from a Castlevania game. But it's just, yeah, and that in itself is really what makes this game challenging, especially, oh, what was that? That was dumb. That shouldn't have happened. But as I was saying, it makes the game very challenging, because what's going to happen is you're going to get hit near a boss, or say, in my case, the final boss, and then have a hell of a time trying to beat said final boss, because said final boss is already pretty tricky as it is, and there's not a whole lot of room to navigate in this game, especially once you get to bosses. So this is a little bit of a secret area right here. As you can tell, this game actually has no staircases. That was one of the other unique things and interesting things about this game, is that there are no staircases, and you have these ropes in place of them, and you can actually jump off the ropes, grab onto another rope if there's one next to it, etc., etc. Kind of an interesting change. I don't know if you see, I don't mind it. I'm not going to say I don't like it. I don't mind it, but I would definitely prefer the regular staircases of, you know, the other classic Castlevania games. Castlevania Adventure 2 for the Game Boy, unfortunately one that's a little more difficult to find, or more expensive at least if you want a complete in-box copy. I believe you can press one of your action buttons while going down a rope, and you can actually slide down the rope much faster, whereas in this one, you have to crawl all the way down the rope, so it's a little slow. So yeah. And I missed those candles. I think one of them might have been an extra life. And I would have been able to get them if I had my third whip power-up, which is another one of the interesting features in this game, and you can basically shoot fireballs from your whip. Unfortunately, once you get hit, you lose it. So, a lot of times you're not going to have the fireball power-up, because you're going to get hit and you're going to lose it. And you won't be able to get it back until you get one of those whip power-ups that are in very set locations. So, one thing, if you've never played this game before, you might notice is this game is very, 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 very sluggish. There are a few things I definitely recommend though, and jumping is very tight. You don't jump very far in this game. There's going to be a lot of tight jumps in this game though, like right here. And one thing I recommend doing is not jumping until you're basically hanging off the edge like this. Kind of like classic Mega Man style. So let's go ahead and do that. Jump right off the edge, jump, jump. You have to be very precise with your jumps in this game. You can get screwed over very easily. We actually have to hop on these platforms and then we'll be at the boss fight. But I'm going to actually grab these power-ups. I think there might be a whip power-up down here. I'm not 100% sure. I actually did a warm-up trial on this game last night because I wanted to see if I could beat the game, because I've never beaten this game before. And even after that trial last night, I wasn't, unfortunately, able to beat the game. But I did get to this part, and I did not go on this bottom part. So, oh look, whip power-up, there we go. Okay, cool. So there is a whip power-up right here. Good to know, good to know. Now those are especially good to know because if you die, say at a boss, you have set checkpoints in this game, just like in previous Castlevania games. So what happens is you usually get set back a few screens back before the boss fight. So if you know where one of those power-ups are, it's very, very useful to know. And here's another interesting feature about this game that you don't see in other Castlevania games, is you have to whip a candle and grab a power-up to make the boss appear. So let's go ahead and do that. And this guy isn't really hard at all. Your main whip can sort of still hit him, but his weapon won't reach you. So you kind of just sit just outside the reach of his little spear he sort of throws out at you. So we're already 25% of the way through the game. Like I said, it's not a very long game, but levels 3 and 4 are very, very challenging. And you'll see what I mean once we get to them. And I had a feeling that was going to happen, and that was... God damn it, man. See, that's the one thing I really hate about this game, is how you get degraded. Your weapons get degraded every time you get hit. And it makes it way more of a... It's not so much challenging, it's just a pain. Like, I don't want to play through the game with the leather whip, you know? And yeah, you're supposed to play well. Right? If you play well, like, that was stupid. That was a totally bad mistake I shouldn't have done. So I got punished for that. Fine, whatever. That's my fault. But, like, that very beginning with the bats, what are you supposed to do when 3 bats are coming down at you? You have no secondary weapons in this game like you do in the other Castlevania games. And that's another one of the interesting things I wanted to mention to you guys, is you don't have your standard, like, axe, cross, holy water, and dagger, things like that. Those are just completely gone in this game, which makes life more tricky than it really needs to be, I think. So not only do you have weapons that degrade whenever you get hit, but you don't have your special secondary items that you had in the other games. So it's just your whip, and it's it's kind of lame, to be honest with you. And you know, a lot of people actually don't like this game. I like this game. I still enjoy it, despite it being super sluggish, super slow. But because a lot of those quirks, I don't really recommend. It's not what I recommend to people. I'm like, if people are like, hey, what's a good Castlevania game to play, I'm not like, oh, hey, play Castlevania Adventure. That game's so awesome. Because that's not really that awesome. But I still enjoy it. But a lot of people don't because of said complaints that I've mentioned already. So... Now that was actually a pretty tricky little jump section right there. Normally I don't actually manage to get those candles as I jump, but I got them, fortunately. One of them was a whip power-up. And your main whip literally does like twice as much damage as your leather whip. So, like, I killed that guy in 2 hits. Normally he takes 4 hits, so... But yeah, when I first played this game back in the day, I used to think just those guys that spit out those balls, I thought that they were the only ones that degraded your whip. But no, it's actually every single enemy in this game will downgrade your whip whenever you get hit by an enemy. So Really kind of sucks. So it's just one of those things. Oh, that's bad. I hope this comes back. Oh man, this could end up really bad. There was no way I was gonna make that. That was stupid on my part. That was my mistake. The eyeballs basically bust apart the bridge, and yeah. One thing you can do is just try to jump over them. But I like to get the points if I can, because you get extra lives through points. And if they make one hole, that's fine. You can jump the one hole. But 2 holes is, whoa. No downgrade, because I'm already downgraded to the lowest possible whip. Which you're going to be stuck with for, you know, the most of the game if you play this game, most likely. Now, of course, with some practice, you can make your way through the game with at least the mid-grade whip. But it's obviously the most rewarding to be able to play with the fireball whip. I mean, you can hit things from a distance. It's not that weak. It's probably about the same strength as your regular, you know, leather whip that you start off with. But, you know, it's more fun having that projectile. Now, I just got an extra life, and that's why I like killing enemies in this game, because you get points from you get points from killing enemies, and you get extra lives as a result. So it looks like 10,000 points is your first extra life. Oh, come on, man. I think you're supposed to go right. Go to these bats, and then I think you're supposed to go left. This is a little bit of a maze part right here, so, you know, let's go right just to make sure. Yeah, I was supposed to go left. And then after this, we'll be at the boss, I think. Or close to it. Super lame. Yeah, the enemy designs in this game really aren't that great either. I mean, it's just... yeah. Those guys could get really annoying, and you see them a lot through the rest of the game. These guys aren't too bad. They're kind of reminiscent of the axe armors in previous games. Oh, come on, man. Really? See, that was my fault. You have to be really proactive in this game, and I was stupid. I'm just jumping like a buffoon. Let's see. Okay. This might be tough. At least I can kill these guys in one hit still. Okay. Now these little guys, they just constantly bounce out, and you basically just have to kill them. You can kill them while they're still in their little holes, so just try to keep an eye out for where they come from, and then just go for them before they hop out. That's the easiest way to take care of them. They all hop out in the same way, like that guy always falls in the same spot, so you can just sort of just sit in place and attack him as he falls down. Same with this guy. That guy you can actually jump up and hit, I believe. Yep. This is probably the easiest boss in the game, because it's pretty much every part you have to attack is pretty much a safe shot. You don't really... there's not much threat as long as you're pretty on point, you know? The second you see one, go for it. I like to stay more towards the middle of the screen. That way if one appears at the left or the right, you know, I sort of had the even amount of time to get to the other side of the screen. And if you sit in the center, you should be able to get to the other side and attack the guy you need to. Now, this level is a bitch, and so is the last level, but I think this one is even more so, and you'll see why in just a few moments. This first part isn't too bad, but the part that comes after, where you have to climb vertically, is, yeah, it's kind of... One up. So there's this sort of mechanism here that's basically bringing the floor and the ceiling together. and you have to destroy it, otherwise you die. And this part's kind of like Mario. Mario 3, I think, has a similar stage setup here and there. That part you just have to duck. It's pretty straightforward stuff, to be honest with you. It's nothing too complicated if you've played a lot of classic video games. One thing I do really like about this game is the soundtrack, and that is definitely one of the high points of this game. It's definitely not the best Castlevania game from a gameplay standpoint, because it's so sluggish and slow in general, and it could be a little unresponsive sometimes when you try to jump. But the soundtrack is pretty solid. Unfortunately, it only loops the same thing, like the same 15-second clip over and over. But the tunes are catchy. They're good classic Castlevania tunes. It's good stuff. It would actually make really good remix fodder. So, Castlevania Adventure 2 actually had a great soundtrack as well. And that was actually an even more involved soundtrack. It wasn't just the same 15-second loop over and over. It was, each loop was a little bit longer, at least. And very good sounding stuff. Castlevania Adventure 2 on the Game Boy is definitely the better of the two games. Definitely the better of the two games. But it's got better visuals. It doesn't feel as sluggish. It's better music overall. Or more involved music. I wouldn't really just say better, because these are some catchy tunes too. But Castlevania Adventure 2 is definitely the better game overall. I like, in that game especially, you can actually pick which way you want to go. You have alternate paths. Not really so much alternate paths, I'm sorry. It's kind of like Mega Man. You could pick whichever stage you want to go to first, and you can play the game in any order you like. So, I always thought that was pretty cool. Now, in case you guys were unaware, I'm actually playing this on my GameCube through the Nintendo Game Boy Player. And the Game Boy Player basically emulates or recreates a Game Boy Advance. I think it might even be the exact Game Boy Advance hardware, just repackaged for the GameCube. So as a result, the Game Boy Advance actually automatically applies color to your Game Boy games. And so we're basically using the default color palette that the Game Boy Advance chooses for classic Game Boy games. Now, there is a way to actually change the palette yourself by doing different combinations of like L and R and some of your face buttons, I believe. But I don't know what those are, so we're just playing with the stock color setup. And, you know, for the most part, it gets the job done. It's not, you know, the best color combination, but there are actually some things that are in actual color now that weren't in color before, which I think is pretty cool. And there's going to be some spikes later on in the game that'll actually be like blue and sort of like a pink or a reddish color. So you can actually tell which ones you need to avoid, or which ones that'll actually come out of the wall. And that'll be the next stage. I'll point those out once we get to those. But we're actually getting towards the end of this stage already. This is, I think, the last part as far as moving platforms are concerned. Or a big death wall of spikes coming my way, I guess I should say. It's getting close, getting close, getting close. Oh, man, that was really close. A little too close for comfort. Yeah, this level can go screw itself. That's just... that's how I feel about this stage. It's just... And this Castlevania can be very, very frustrating as a result of levels like this. It's just... The game is already so slow as it is, but they really cranked the difficulty up for this one. And not even... I like a good challenge, but this isn't even, to me, really like a fun challenge. Because if you die, you have to go through that whole section all over again. And you really have to fight with the controls in this game. And it's so sluggish. Sometimes you won't jump just right because... It's just, yeah, it's not good. There's actually going to be a secret here, so you can jump through one of these walls right here. And I think you might have an extra life up here. I hope so. Yep, one up. And then full power up. Oh, I'm sorry, a whip power up, not a full whip power up, but just a whip power up. Now this is a boss. This is actually a flying boss. He's not too bad either as far as I recall. I beat him almost instantly last night. It was just like, okay, that's it. He kind of bounces back and forth and then flies down the screen. Like so. That's it. Now we are at the fourth and I believe final stage. Again, I'm going to assume it's the final stage because, again, I got to a vampire that looks like Dracula and then changes into a big-ass bat after I beat him. And it's the only boss that has two forms. So I'm going to assume it's the final boss. And some of these sort of soldiers in the background are going to come out and appear, like in some other Castlevania games, after this one. Now I don't want to lose this, and I'll explain why in just a brief moment. I've got my second whip power-up, so... or my first whip power-up, technically. These little coins that come out give you 50 points apiece, which is actually a decent little chunk of points. Okay, now the reason I'm going to point it out right now, the reason I didn't want to lose my first whip power-up is that this guy I just took down, he's basically like a weaker version of the very first boss, is when you have the regular whip, you can only hit him twice before getting hit by his spear. So you can go get in, whip him twice, and then move away. If you try to whip him more than that, you're going to get hit. So what happens is, in order to fight him without getting hit, he pushes the screen over. And so, you know, you'll push the screen over a little bit, and you'll finally kill him after like 4 or 6 shots or something. And you'll move back to this side of the screen, and he'll reappear. And you just do it over and over and over again. There's really no way to get past him without getting hit, unless you have a more powerful whip. So if you got hit on the earlier part of the screen, your best bet is to just like run through the guy, and you'll end up taking 3 hits from him, which is a majority of your health bar. But that is what I suggest at that point. And this could be pretty frustrating right here too. Because, God, stupid goddamn ball, man. Really terrible enemy design in this game. It's just not any... It's not any fun. I mean, it's just meh, very monotonous. And, you know, like I said, I like this Castlevania game. I just, I don't recommend it to people. It's not a Castlevania game that I think is really great. I mean, there's really very few, if any, Castlevania games I just honestly, sincerely dislike. But this one will get on your nerves if you really try to play it well. It's just, it's frustrating. It's kind of bottom of the barrel stuff when it comes to the Castlevania games. The soundtrack is good. I mean, I like the whip power-up, obviously. The fireball whip, I mean. But some of these enemies, and the enemy placement is just there to piss you off. Like, you can't... And one of the biggest things is that you can't attack when you're on your ropes. Which is why ropes kind of suck compared to stairs. In the classic Castlevania games, there were staircases in place of ropes, but at least you could still attack while you're on those staircases. So you weren't just completely, you know, nullified. And I just lost my whip again. It's just... You know, you could at least do something when you're on the staircases in classic Castlevania games. Now here is the next section that is kind of a pain in the ass. Is spikes everywhere, and you will die in one hit. And this is where the unresponsive sort of controls kind of come into play. Just like that. See, that was... I know on that part I'm supposed to jump up to the platform and not try to fall off. But... So you can't really do anything about that. I mean... And I would just avoid the enemies if you can, some of them. So basically what's going to happen is we're going to get a whip power up, and this guy is basically going to reappear. You have to kill him again. You barely even pushed him off the screen. It's like the game can't even remember that. It's... yeah. And that happens to a degree in other Castlevania games, but not usually ever to the point where it makes things more frustrating. You're just like, oh, another skeleton, whoop-de-doo, you know? There we go. Alright. Now, on this section, you can actually just walk off the platforms. Fortunately, they at least fixed that in this game, because in the classic, well, older Castlevania games, if you fell off a platform, you would literally just go straight down, and you would fall to your death if you had spikes beneath you, guaranteed. But this, you sort of like fall off at an angle, which is kind of nice. A little more... I don't want to say realistic, but a little more forgiving. So, just like so. And on these last ones, you want to jump off. But you have to jump low, and you have to prep for it as well. Because you're going to hit the spikes at the top if you don't. Now, if that guy knocks you into those spikes, you die in one hit. So, oh, come on, man, really? See, really cheap enemy placement. And as far as I'm aware, no more secret rooms. I tried climbing up to that one early on, and nope, no secret room. Alright, so this is where you can actually kind of tell which spikes are going to come out of the wall. Thanks to the Game Boy Advance, some are colored. And this is a power-up. Got it. So as you can see, the tips of them are sort of maroon or reddish, whereas the other ones are blue. And that's definitely nice, playing it on the Game Boy Advance. Or technically the GameCube Game Boy Player, but it's basically a Game Boy Advance. So... Now, hearts in this game, which I just picked up, they actually build your health bar at the bottom, as opposed to, you know, actually building towards your ammunition for your secondary items. Because there are no secondary items in this game! Yay! No secondary items. So, you're pretty much stuck with your whip. But fortunately, you do have more instances in this game where health is given to you. So you do have several hearts in each stage, like there was another one. Just built me up by 2 or 3 hit points. There's another one, but I already had full health. See, I'd rather fight these guys than, you know, like those really lizard reptile things in the ground that spit bouncing balls all over the screen. Those enemies are just really, they're really annoying. That's what they are. They're nuisance enemies. And not like, say, like the Lost Souls like in Doom that I was mentioning in my Doom Let's Play, where those are just nuisance enemies. But those guys in the ground that shoot bouncing balls, they're more like pain in the ass enemies. They're not just nuisance enemies. They are a real annoyance. They are... Alright, so here's Dracula. There's going to be two forms, and I'll try to explain it as I go. Or you can just watch me. You can sit here, jump, duck, jump, duck, jump, and then go to the next one. Jump, duck, jump, duck, and again. And then I like to just ignore this one completely. And then down here, bam, 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 just like that. Now Dracula is this big-ass bat, and he's a real pain. He's very much a pain. Holy crap, I beat him on my first try. I really hope that's it. I really hope that's it, because you have no idea how many times I tried to beat him over the course of my lifetime, basically. And I didn't try again until last night. Last night was the first time I've tried doing it in a long time. Wow, that's a crazy looking castle. That doesn't even look like a normal castle. Wow. Alright guys, well I'm assuming we have actually beaten the game. So... mark one off the list. I've finally beaten Castlevania Adventure. That was actually one of the few Castlevania games I've never completed, to be honest with you. I can't think of any others I haven't finished. I mean, I've even beaten the arcade version of Castlevania, Haunted Castle, which is a very tough game. Castlevania Chronicles, beat that. Oh, the MSX version, but that's kind of... I haven't even really tried to beat that. Huh. Maybe I've beaten every Castlevania I've played now. Huh, maybe that is. Maybe I have done that. Because I beat Castlevania Adventure 2 way back in the day. It was a much easier game. I think I beat it in the first couple of days I had it. So yeah, I apologize if this wasn't the most exciting Let's Play ever, because Castlevania Adventure really... Even though I still like the game, it's hard to play. It's kind of... It's just hard to play. It's sluggish, it's slow, it's... Most people that have played this game, I think, don't really like it. It's very easy to get annoyed when playing this game. Like last night, I was trying to beat this game, trying to attempt to beat this game, and I died at Dracula. I used at least 3 or 4 continues on him. And what happens in this game is when you continue, you get shot back to the very beginning of the stage, and you have to do it all over again. And so basically what that meant is I had to go through that whole last level again, which you already saw was kind of a pain in the ass. It's a tough stage, and the controls can be very unresponsive. Like if you want to jump over a platform, you have to... It's just... If you tap like left and jump at the same time, sometimes you'll just jump straight up. So you have to get into the rhythm of holding left for a split second before you press the jump button. The problem is you very rarely even have that split second, because in that one instance where you had the moving platforms going up and down, and you had spikes in the ceiling and the ground, and you had to make perfect jumps, otherwise you die, and you have to do it over again. And if you die a certain amount of times, you get a game over, and thus you have to repeat it. It gets frustrating. And then say you get hit, and you get to Dracula with just your leather whip, which is what usually happened for me. It's very, very frustrating. Dracula's second form is really the tough form. It's, you know, that bat just flies across the screen. And he'll stop and he'll throw bats down. And if you're right underneath those bats, they'll actually home in on you. If you're far enough away, they won't. They'll just sort of spread out and go off the screen. Which is fortunately mostly what happened in this playthrough. But you can get caught in a bad place really fast in that last boss, and it only takes like 3 or 4 hits for you to die from him. So, yeah, it's tough. And as a result, it's a Castlevania game that'll make your blood boil. If you have thin skin, or you get annoyed easily when you die, I don't really recommend playing this game. Because last night when I was practicing it, I continued 3 or 4 times, and by this point it was like 2:30 in the morning. I was like, it's time to go to bed. And I was like, should I do it again? I was like, no, this is already getting on my nerves and agitating me. I'm probably going to be up all night tossing and turning if I keep playing it. Not literally, but you know what I mean. It's just, yeah. I like the game. I'm glad I have it in my collection. I have a complete in-box copy. But, you know, it's not one I really recommend everyone go out and, you know, shell out some hard-earned money on. Now, if you really do want to play it, it's a cheap game, cartridge only at least. You can get a cartridge copy for like $5 or $6. So, if you really want to try it, go for it. But, you know, I think it's kind of bottom of the barrel when it comes to the Castlevania games. But fortunately, this game came out still relatively early on in Castlevania's life. I think this was technically the 3rd Castlevania game on consoles. Mainly consoles or handhelds, not counting like computers or the arcade. So you had Castlevania 1, Castlevania 2, and then this was technically the 3rd one that came out. Because Castlevania 2, I think, was 88, I think. 87 or 88, and then this was 89. And then Castlevania 3, I believe, was 90. So, I mean, for still a very early Castlevania game, it's probably not bad for what it is, and the Game Boy was a very early platform at that time, so... Which is why when Castlevania 2 came out, things were sped up, visuals were more impressive, there was less slowdown and stuff like that. Things were tweaked and the game was a lot more enjoyable as a result. And it's definitely the far better game of the two. And you'll probably see a Let's Play on that very shortly. So, but anyway guys, I'm going to wrap it up here. As usual, I want to say thanks for watching. Expect more Castlevania games all this month of October. And yeah, I'll catch you guys soon. So until then, take care.